If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe. It would really help the channel, and we have battle reports, boarding actions, and list videos every week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. This video is going to be Custodes Tips and Tricks Part 2. Sorry if I sound a little weird in this one. I've been a little sick for the past few days. Part 1 was such a hit, I had to make Part 2. I think I will do these tips and tricks in a 3-part series. That way we can move on to some more Custodes specific faction strategies. The Custodes deployment video will be in 2 parts as well. Part 2 tips and tricks are Prosecutors or Witchseekers? Should I take Shields or Vexilla? When and how do I use Golden Light? Which kata do I use? Which detachments are the best? Which detachments are the most fun? When do we use that Wardens 4-up Feel No Pain? Why is the Bladechampion in so many lists? What about that new Shield Captain model and the loadout? What makes the Virtus Praetors, aka our jet bikes, so bad? Our first tip, Prosecutors or Witchseekers. These 2 units are our best chaff secondary units in our codex. The Prosecutors are 40 points for a 4 model unit, while the Witchseekers are 50 points for a 4 model unit. Of course, some games, 4 sister models will not be enough to hold it all game, so we may need to divert a unit in our list for those games. They are also our cheapest unit to do secondary actions or move block. The Witchseekers are better for setting up first turn scoring or move blocking an aggressive army turn 1. They have a 6-inch scout ability which gives them a movement of 6 after the first turn has been decided. I prefer to have at least 1 Witchseeker unit in my list to scout towards the center objective in case I draw aerial deny or secure no man's land, or another secondary card that requires a model and my army to be in the center of the board. So right now, I would say you want at least 1 Witchseeker units and then 1 to 2 prosecuting units so you can hold your home objective and run around and do some secondary actions. And I'll show you how you can move block and charge block and screen with these units in the Adeptus Custodes deployment video that will be coming out soon. Should I take a shield and or Vexilla? What do they do? The Presidium shield adds 1 wound to the model and the Vexilla adds 1 OC to every model in the unit. You can only equip 1 Vexilla per unit. The Custodian Guard, Wardens, and the Alaris are the only units who can equip a Vexilla. The Custodian Guard are the only unit who can equip the Presidium shields. The Custodian Guard and the Alaris units, the model equipped with the Vexilla cannot equip a Guardian Spirit or a Constellan Axe at the same time. The Alaris unit must equip a Misericordia with a Vexilla, while the Custodian Guard has the Misericordia and their Presidium shield to go along with that Vexilla. The Wardens unit, 1 model can equip the Vexilla and the Guardian Spirit Constellan Axe. Always equip the Vexilla in our Wardens units. Why would you not? The Alaris are an attack unit, not a unit we want standing on objectives all game. The +1 OC is not something I want with my Alaris if I lose melee damage potential. 4 to 5 attacks depending on the weapon. And what about the Custodian Guard? And that really depends on what you're using the unit for. If it's going to be an aggressive attack unit, I would equip all Guardian Spears to get that maximum amount of potential damage. If the guard unit will be used to hold or pressure enemy objectives, or being led by Inquisitor Draxus, I would put a Vexilla in the unit. 5 guard would be a unit with a total of 15 objective control, or higher with a character attached. We can make a unit of all Sentinel Blades with the Presidium shields to have a unit full of 4 wound Custodian Guard. For the most part, the Sentinel Blades lost damage is just too much to make the unit a threat anymore to anything other than light infantry. When to use Golden Light? First off, what is Golden Light? And from Golden Light is an ability with the Alaris Terminators. Once per battle at the end of your opponent's turn, if this unit is not engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you can remove it from the battlefield and place it in the strategic reserves. This ability combined with the Slayer of Tyrants for wound rerolls is why the Alaris is my favorite Custodes infantry unit. It allows us to redeploy this 5-inch movement very dangerous unit. It was also changed to the Alaris go into reserves. It used to be you had to bring them back down the following turn. Now you can hold them until later turns and or rapid ingress them down on the opponent's turn. Here are some tips how to use it and when. The first one, I will have the Alaris in Deep Strike, bring them down to take out a key unit, and then as soon as I can, Golden Light them back up to have the Alaris as a Deep Strike rapid ingress threat in my toolbox. Number 2, we can start the unit on the board, and if we get turn 2, we can actually use this round 1 since it is a redeploy. It also allows us to Deep Strike the Alaris unit round 1.
It is a bit risky since we will not have the unit in deep strike. If we do get turn 1, we can't use this because it has to be at the end of the opponent's turn, and you wouldn't be able to use this until turn 2 if you got turn 1. Number 3, in certain deployments, more so the long deployments, we can use this unit to bait our opponent. I will start this unit on the side of the board, but wait until halfway through the deployment before I place them, while I load up the center and one side of my deployment. Then I deploy the Alaris on the side of the board where I have very little to no units. The Alaris are such a large threat to the opponent, they will have to place some units on that side of the board, or risking us taking all the mid-board objectives. I may even spend turn 1 moving the Alaris towards the closest objective to them, just to draw enemy units towards them. Then I golden light them and then move them to the other side of the board with the rest of my army. Then I overload 2 no man's land objectives before the enemy can get those committed units, they're over on the other side of the board now, over to stop me. And those are just a few tips you can use, because Golden Light, it also really depends on who you're playing in the army, what's going on, but you can use it for some tricksy little things. Which kata do I use? Martial kata is our army rule, which means any detachment will have access to martial kata. In martial kata, each time a unit from your army is selected to fight, select one of the kata stances. Until that unit has finished making its attacks, that selected stance is active for it and it gains the relevant ability. Dakatari stance, melee weapons equipped by models in that unit have sustained hits 1 ability. Then we have Rendak stance, melee weapons equipped by models in this unit have the lethal hits ability. Dakatari stance for sustained hits 1 on a critical hit roll is what we will choose anytime we'll be wounding the enemy on a 2+ to a 4+. Rendak stance for lethal hits on a critical hit roll is what we'll be using when we're fighting anything that will make us need a 5 or 6 on the wound roll. Since we have Guardian Spears on most of our units, it usually means anything toughness 8 or higher, we're going to pick lethal hits. And for an advanced tip, units like the Bladechampion attached to the Custodian Guard can sometimes, against a higher toughness vehicle, you can pick sustained hits to try to get more hits with the Bladechampion to fish for those devastating wounds. And the Custodian Guard can even give access to a full reroll of the wound roll. So if you charge a high toughness vehicle on objective, you might want to take sustained hits just to try to get more hits through with the Bladechampion and then fish for those devastating wounds. Because then you don't have to worry about any of the high saves that the vehicles have, since you're just going to devastating wounds right through that. Which detachments are the best? For this, we will look at the Custodes detachments that are the best for a competitive game. Shield Host is a most played detachment at tournaments. Let's take a quick look at the detachment rule with a few key stratagems. Martial Mastery is the detachment rule. At the start of the battle round, you can select one of the bullet points below. If you do so, until the start of the next battle round, that bullet point effects apply. The first one is each Adeptus Custodes model with the Martial Kata ability. Melee weapons equipped by that model gain the critical hits on 5 ability. Or you could pick each Adeptus Custodes model with the Martial Kata ability. Melee weapons equipped by that model gain +1 AP. Some of the stratagems for Shield Host that make it so powerful: Arcane Genetic Alchemy for 1 CP is a 4 Feel No Pain, and you can use this any phase once those mortal wounds have been allocated. That's what makes it so strong. You can wait till you actually take those mortal wounds before you decide to use this. Then we have Multi-Potentiality for 1 CP, and this is just a simple fallback, shoot, and charge stratagem. Then Vigilance Eternal for 1 CP, you can only use this on our battle line, our Custodian Guard, and we can sticky objectives with this. I like this stratagem just because it allows us not to be standing on objectives all game and gives us a few extra tools in our list. Shield Host is the most straightforward of the detachments. Pick a good melee units, back them up with some secondary scoring with either more melee infantry or some ranged shooting. The general game plan of getting into combat and using our overwhelming melee damage combined with our hard to kill profiles to win games. I play Shield Host in most of our channel since I find there's a lot of list building options with this detachment. We can even put the Dreadnoughts in this list since the Martial Master rule does give them even more melee threat. We can use the improved melee rules from the Shield Host to improve some underperforming units. If you're looking to start getting into some competitive games, this would be the detachment I recommend. The other detachment I would recommend to players wanting to play competitive games is the Talons of the Emperor. This detachment does take a bit more skill to pilot, nothing hard, just less forgiving than Shield Hosts. And let's take a look at the Talons of the Emperor detachment and a few of the stratagems. The Talons of the Emperor detachment rule is Revered Companions. Psychotic units from your army gain the following ability: Null Aegis, which is an aura, While Adeptus Custodes unit within 6 inches of this unit, models in that unit have a 5-up feel no pain against psychic and mortal wounds. All other Adeptus Custodes units from your army gain the following ability: Deadly Unity, Oscillating Aura. While a Psychona unit is within 6 inches of this unit, each time a model in that Psychona unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. And this one is a bit more difficult since you do have to have units within 6 inches of each other to get this detachment rule to work and get the benefit of some of these stratagems. Let's go over some of the Talons of the Emperor stratagems. The first one, Emperor's Executioners for 2 CP. Each time a model in one of your units target an enemy unit below starting strength, add 1 to the wound roll. That is good for getting some damage in. The next one is Hunt as 1, and this is also a simple fall back, shoot and charge stratagem. Last up is Talon Pincer for 1 CP, and this is the Talons of the Emperor defining stratagem if you ask me. In your opponent's movement phase, if they end a normal, advance, or fall back within 9 inches of any of our units, we can do a normal move up to 6 inches. And if you've noticed, there is some restrictions in here. You can pick 2 units, but only if one is a Custodes unit and one is a Psychona unit that are within 6 inches of each other. What makes this detachment harder to play than the Shield Host is the detachment rule and the Talon Pincer 1 CP stratagem. We ideally want our Adeptus Custodes units within 6 inches of a Psychona unit to gain that access to the 5-up feel no pain to mortals, as well as using the stratagems on 2 units at the same time. Talon Pincer for 1 CP gives that reactive movement. This can be used for many different things, enough where we may need a dedicated video on how to really take advantage of this stratagem. We can use it to move blocks, steal objectives, make enemy charges harder, or even move out of line of sight. And we can only use this once per turn in the opponent's movement phase. We need to use this carefully, think before we use it. And those are the 2 detachments I would consider when looking at a competitive game. Which detachment is the most fun? Most fun as in easy to learn for new players and something for more experienced players to try out. Shield Host or Orc Champions is my choice. Oddly enough, Shield Host is one of the most competitive Custodes detachments as well as one of the easier detachments to start with. The detachment rule is simple: pick an army-wide combat buff, use that buff with stratagem support to help protect new players from mortal wound bombs, feel bad moments. More attacks in melee equals more dice rolled, more fun. Orc Champions is my detachment choice for casual games. If I want to play a fun, silly game where winning does not matter, this is my go-to. It does have some teeth in the detachment rule. Let's take a quick look at the Orc Champions detachment rule. At the start of your command phase, select 1 unit from your opponent's army. Until the start of the next command phase, each time a model in your Adeptus Custodes character unit from your army makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, add 1 to the wound roll. With stratagems only working on our expensive characters, this Orc Champions is not the most competitive, but I find it can do some damage in casual games. With a different theme than the rest of the codex, the lists look and play different than the Talons or the Shield Host list. You get a lot of hero moments in this detachment, making for some memorable games with some truly silly moments. Next we have, when do I use that Wardens 4-up feel no pain? This is a harder one since it really depends on the opponent and the game. If the enemy list is very heavy in one aspect, shooting or melee, we want to save it for when we're being attacked by the big bads of the list. We do not want to use the 4-up feel no pain on Karn with some berserkers shooting at us with some plasma pistols and bolt pistols, and then not have it for when some exalted 8-bound charge in. So you want to try to hold it for when you're going to take large amounts of damage from those big units. It is good to ask your opponent what is the damage of weapons attacking your unit. A few damage 1 attacks coming in are not worth it. But if there will be some damage 3 attacks coming in, the 4-up feel no pain will make a difference from losing half the unit or losing a model to 2 models. If there was 1 to 4 3 damage attacks coming in, I would risk not using the 4-up feel no pain. If it's 5 or more attacks coming in, those damage 3 attacks, I would consider using it. If a unit we want to charge has the Fight's First ability, using the 4-up feel no pain is a great way to get around being chopped up before we get to swing. With a 4-up invulnerable and a 4-up feel no pain with a possible -1 to the wound roll, we can engage with almost any enemy unit in the game, great for if we need to tie up or engage those really dangerous melee units. I try to save the feel no pain until those later turns if I can. Not if I risk losing the unit though. In turn 4 or turn 5, a unit of Wardens with a character attached standing on objective will be very hard to remove. In those later turns, when players have a lot less assets on the table, these Wardens can take an entire round of shooting at them if we spike on our rolls. Next up, we have why is the Bladechampion so good? The Bladechampion adds something to the unit it is attached to: speed. With the Virtus Praetors, our bikes, in such a bad place right now, other than Venatari, our infantry have a movement of 6 inches, and since infantry make up a large portion of our list, our army is on average a movement of 6 army. Not Death Guard slow, but we're not considered a fast army. The Bladechampion's martial inspiration ability allows the Bladechampion's unit to advance and charge once per game, with Swift Onslaught giving the unit reroll the charge all game. The Bladechampion can attach to the Wardens, which are one of the best units in the Codex right now. They can be attached to the Custodian Guard as well. Combined, these make very strong units. Wardens with the Bladechampion gives a unit that can advance and charge once per game and has a 4-up Feel No Pain once per game. The Bladechampion also allows the Warden's Resolute Will, that -1 to the wound ability, to be active since it needs a character attached for it to be active. Then the Bladechampion adds a lot of potential damage with that Victus weapon profile, AP 3, damage 3 with devastating wounds. If we have a Bladechampion with the Custodian Guard unit on an objective we control, the unit will re-roll the wound roll. That gives the Bladechampion a much better chance to roll a 6 for those devastating wounds, or at least to get a normal wound through. The other characters the Custodes have access to do add their own things, Valerian making the unit much harder to kill in melee, Trajan hits harder, and the Shield Captain reducing stratagem costs. All of these characters have one thing in common: they can join Wardens, and Wardens dominate our list so much we want to pair the character that gives the most tools, and that usually means a Bladechampion with our Wardens. You can put Valerian there as well, but usually I like to start with a Bladechampion. What about the new Shield Captain and the loadout? What about our new Shield Captain model? We've not seen him on the channel. Well, I do have one. Here he is in the top right hand corner there. The reason I have not used him on the channel because right now at his points cost of 140 points, he just does not bring enough to the table. Even in casual games, I have not used him that much. One turn of double kata just isn't enough to warrant a Shield Captain over a Bladechampion or a Valerian. The Alar Shield Captain is in a category of his own since he is the only leader for the Alaris. With that out of the way, let's actually talk about the new loadout we can equip on the Shield Captain. The new loadout for the Shield Captain is the Presidium Shield with the Pyrothite Spear. The Pyrothite Spear is a Melta Spear, Melta 2, 12-inch range, 1 attack, hitting on 2s, strength 9, AP 4, damage 6. The melee profile is the same as the Guardian Spear for the Shield Captain, 7 attacks, hit on 2s, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2. And the shield just adds 1 to the bear's wound characteristics. This is actually the best loadout of all the options right now, giving the Shield Captain 1 extra wound, still the same potent melee, now with a 12-inch range Melta Spear to shoot as well. I might try the Shield Captain with the Melta Spear, leading a unit of those Melta Spear Custodian Guard and Orc champions to try to make a strange all-shooting Custodes list. Next is, why are the Virtus Praetors so bad? Let's start by looking at the data sheet. Movement 12, toughness 6, a 2-up save with a 4-up invulnerable, the 4 wounds, 6 leadership, and OC of 2. We have 2 ranged weapons. The salvo launcher has a 24-inch range, strength 9, AP 2, damage 3, with the Hurricane Bolter with rapid fire 3, twin linked, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. Melee weapon, we have the Inceptor Lance, 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2, with Lance, so that will be +1 to wound if this unit charges. The abilities for the Virtus Praetors, the Turbo Boost, each time this unit advances, do not make an advance roll, and stand until the end of the phase, add 6 to the move characteristic of the model. So that's just auto advance 6. Then we have Quicksilver Execution, which is, in my opinion, one of the worst abilities in the game. Once per battle, after this unit ends an advance move, you can select one unit, excluding monsters or vehicles, that it moved over during that move. Then roll 1d6 for each model in this unit, so it's not the unit that you went over, it's the amount of Virtus Praetors you have, and so you roll d6 for each Virtus Praetor. For every 2+, you do 2 mortal wounds to that unit. Now the datasheet itself is a good unit. Many armies would love to have this unit, until you tell them the points price. 2 for 140 or 3 for 210, that is 70 points per model. Then take away all the anti-tank shooting in their faction, except a Land Raider and a tank, that you will have to sell your firstborn child to afford. The jet bikes have good speed, with a lot of melee attacks with Lance, not bad at all. The Venatari, though, are cheaper for 3 for 165 points for the same melee attack profile, for 2 inch less movement, but they have the infantry keyword. The bikes have the fly keyword, but with having to measure when going over terrain, along with the mounted keyword, so that they can't just smash the ruins like infantry, makes that movement 12 not as impressive as it could be. They also have a larger base with big lances as weapons, and makes it hard to hide 3-leads behind smaller terrain. I try not to be too negative on the channel just to be negative. We have enough of that in the world. But time to pile on more negatives for this unit. If only to drive the sales down on these things, so GW will buff them before 11th edition. A lot of other bikes in the game, the model will have an extra toughness, but not us. Not our top of the line, best of the Imperium jet bikes. Don't be silly, you get the same toughness as a Custodian Guard. Okay, well, we are really lacking in long-range anti-tank damage. Light them up with our awesome jet bike Melt-A-Guns. Wait, never mind, it is a one-shot, range 24, strength 9, AP 2, damage 3 gun. It wounds most vehicles on a 5+. If we have a max unit with 3 bikes, the shield captain for 350 points. If we get lucky and the 4 shots hit and wound a toughness 9, 10 wounds rhino, we could one-shot that bad boy, and points well spent. One last thing, and I will leave the poor Virtus Praetors alone. The ability they have, that Quicksilver Execution, is one of the worst. I might even put my foot down and say this is the worst ability in the Codex. With a shield captain on Dawn Eagle, we would have 4 models in the unit for a potential 8 mortal wounds to an enemy unit. Not bad, right? Except the Virtus Praetor units needs to have advanced over the enemy unit to use this ability. Neither of the ranged weapons we can equip are assault, nor do we have any access to advance and charge anywhere in the Codex. It will be a very rare time. Just charging the target unit will not end up with better results in damage. The rare occasion we need to advance to get to a point on a map, we could use the ability, but 95% of the time, in a game, we are never going to use this Quicksilver Execution ability. And that is the end of my jet bikes rant. I hope the ability and the salvo launcher do get some love eventually from GW. These are my tips and tricks part 2. I hope you find at least a few of them useful. This video was a bit longer than part 1. I blabbed on a bit longer on these topics than that part 1. If a shorter, with a little bit less info in the video like part 1 on each topic would be better, let me know. Part 3 will be the last of the Custodes tips and tricks. I want to try a few more beginner-friendly series for the factions I have. Part 3 will have the more advanced tips and tricks of the series. Thank you all for the support. If you like the video, subscribe for weekly battle reports, list videos, boarding actions, and other Warhammer 40K content. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by.